Hello humans, I am the Black Cat. Today we take a look at the mysterious disappearance of William Tyrrell. So on the 12th of September 2014, William Tyrrell, who was 3 years old at the time, his foster parents and his 5-year-old sister were visiting his grandmother's house in Kendal, a small town a few hours drive out of Sydney. His grandmother's house is directly across the road from the Kendal State Forest. At around 10 to 10:25 a.m, William and his sister were playing on the front patio. William and his mother were playing a game they called Daddy Tiger, where William would roar at her and she would roar back. His mother states that he went from the patio to the yard and around the corner of the house. She could still hear him roaring, and then, just like that, silence. She went to look for him, but he was gone.
We've literally got a situation where a child has disappeared, and as if it was just plucked, or William was just plucked from the air.
She mentions that when this happened, there was no sound, not even the sound of birds or wind. At approximately 10:56, she phoned emergency services to report him missing.
Yeah, hi, my son is missing. He's 3.5.
Police arrived at 11:06, and William has not been seen since. There have been some tips about sightings of him, but when police investigate, they find out that it's actually not him at all. So what are the theories? In all honesty, when I heard he was a foster child, my first thought was, have they spoken to his biological parents? Because I know sometimes when biological parents have children taken away into foster care, they would go and take their kids back without anyone knowing. But apparently the authorities did talk to them, and they have been ruled out. There have been several theories relating to this case. It's still an open investigation, with several large-scale investigation squads taking on the case to find William. The police and his parents are, of course, hoping that they will find him alive and well. Of those theories, the ones police are looking at include investigating local registered sex offenders, going with the possibility he was abducted by a pedophile. They also investigated a local man who was familiar with the household, as he had just installed a washing machine in the house sometime earlier and was waiting for parts to arrive to finish the job. However, those men have since been ruled out by police as well. The mother mentioned that she saw 2 parked cars on the side of the road at around the same time. This was unusual because the grandmother's house is on a dead-end street, and they've never seen those cars before or since. But so far, the police haven't been able to track those cars down. I did see it mentioned somewhere that the local registered sex offenders' cars matched the cars that she saw, but apparently the other police had investigated them and ruled them out as possible suspects. For this next theory, I feel the need to give a disclaimer. This is purely my own thoughts. I have no real knowledge of anything of the events or people involved. I'm not stating this as fact at all. It's just me thinking out loud, which is pretty much the whole point of my channel, really. Just my thoughts, no real evidence or whatever. Just putting that out there. Okay, so while looking at all the information on this case, I started to wonder if the foster parents and foster grandmother were somehow involved. Again, I have no authority on anything, but the mother's story does seem to change a couple of times. First, I read that she actually went inside to make a cup of tea when William disappeared, and it was only after she didn't hear him for about 5 minutes that she went looking. But during the interview with 60 Minutes, she claimed she was outside and he just ran around the corner and disappeared. Another odd point is that it wasn't until sometime later that she mentioned the cars.
There wasn't anyone suspicious in the area, any vehicles?
No.
The fact that the cars matched the sex offenders' cars is interesting, but then when you consider that the police checked them out and they were cleared, kind of makes that suspect. I mean, I'm just throwing thoughts around, but would it be possible that they looked up the registered sex offenders in the area, found out what kind of cars they had, and then claimed to see those cars when William disappeared? It's a possibility. Again, I'm just spitballing ideas. The mother also claims that she didn't hear anything, but then later claimed that she heard a scream, like a child hurting themselves. She went looking where she thought the scream came from and didn't find anything. and thought maybe it was a bird or something. Also, during the 60-minute interview, it's mentioned that this was an unplanned spare-of-the-moment trip, that they surprised the children with a trip to Grandma's house. But the husband apparently had to drive to the next town to do business and run errands. So it's a bit strange that they would plan a trip to Grandma's house out of nowhere when the husband still had to do work and couldn't do the work at the grandmother's house. I also saw a comment somewhere of someone saying that the mother seemed too calm in the 000 call. She didn't sound frantic or concerned. I do know that different people have different reactions to situations. Maybe she's just the type of person who is very reserved. Who knows? All these things alone don't seem like anything, but when you put it all together it starts to look a little shady, but maybe that's just me. But I wanted to take a look at some of the more out-of-the-box theories. Just as a disclaimer, I in no way intend to make light of or mock the disappearance of this child, but it's these theories that brought my attention to this case in the first place. I was actually looking at stories of the missing 411. The missing 411 is something that was brought to light by David Paulides. I'm probably mispronouncing that. In a series of books, he wrote about his investigations into the strange disappearances of people in national parks in North America. He found that a lot of cases were very similar and started to see a pattern connecting them. Sometimes people were found sometime later with no memory of what happened to them, or they would be people who were unable to communicate what happened. And oddly, most of the people, if not all, seem to lose their shoes. David so far hasn't come up with an answer as to why the people go missing, but he is also known for being a Bigfoot believer. I find the stories of the missing 411 very interesting, and I may do more videos on different cases from David's investigations, but we'll see how we go. So the fact that William's grandmother lives next to a national park have made some theorise that there may be a connection to the missing 411 cases. The police and fire and rescue service did search the bushland next to the house and found nothing, but it's an interesting thought. Would a 3-year-old wander into the bush alone? I doubt it. And the way the mother explains it, I'm not sure he would have made it to the bush line on the other side of the road, or even the road itself, before someone saw him going that way. Looking at the house, there is a fairly large space of yard before it reaches the road. He was also wearing a Spider-Man outfit that was bright red, and among the greenness of the area, he would have stood out. I don't think a 3-year-old would be that good at hiding that no one would have found him if he was, hiding behind a tree or something. It's interesting that William's mother mentions that it was very quiet when William disappeared.
There was no wind. There were no birds, there was no movement, there was nothing.
I find this fact interesting because I've spoken to people who have lived in the country and who are believers in spirits and such, and they would say that when the bush goes quiet, that something is wrong. I also think if he was grabbed by strangers, he would have made some kind of noise, or she would have heard a car leaving, which brings us to the Yowie or Yahoo theory. If you've never heard of the Yahoo, it's kind of the Australian version of Bigfoot, but not as big. It's a hairy humanoid that lives in the bush. Some have theorised that a Yahoo may have abducted William. The Yahoo comes from some indigenous stories about hairy bushmen or mountain men who lived in the bush from the beginning of time and would abduct children from camps and take them to raise as one of their own. Whereas the legends of them are more on the spiritual side, I believe. This is one European account from 1842. The natives of Australia believe in the Yahoo, this being they described as resembling a man of nearly the same height, with long white hair hanging down the head over the features. The arms are extraordinarily long, furnished at the extremities with great talons, and the feet turned backwards, so that, on flying from man, the imprint of the foot appears as if the being had travelled in the opposite direction. Altogether, they describe it as a hideous monster of an unearthly character and ape-like appearance. The hairy men is such a well-known legend that they were even made into TV characters for the TV show Cleverman. But obviously they changed them a lot for the show, making them a sub-race of humans rather than spirit beings. The existence of this creature or legend has led some people to theorise that William may have been abducted by a Yahoo or Yowie. So, in conclusion, even though there are many theories around what happened to young William, one fact remains the same. A young boy is missing, and I, along with everyone else, hopes that he is returned home safe and sound. But anyway, that brings us to the end of this mystery. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll catch you next week. Bye!